Hey everybody, it's Lo, and I'm here today to tell you about some of the gear and instruments I use to make the Bottomland album here at my home studio in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I also did all of my parts and the mixing and mastering of the God Street Wine album that came out earlier this year, and the songs that we released in 2017 and 2018, all done here at my house in New Orleans. And I'm going to tell you about the gear, and I have to tell you right away that I'm not that interested in gear. My thing is music, songwriting, performing, the feel, the technique. Those are the things that I'm really into. The gear that I have here is pretty simple stuff. It's pretty basic. I think some of you might be surprised how inexpensive and basic my setup is. But these days you can make a pretty good sounding record with just really basic gear. So the first thing I want to show you is really the heart of it. It's my computer. So come on in here, and here it is. It's a laptop. It's a MacBook Pro. It's a couple years old. It's got a 13-inch screen, so not very big. More screen real estate would often come in handy, but I'm very used to doing it on the little screen. And I do everything with the keyboard and mouse. I don't use any external control surface like many people do. I do it all on the laptop. And as you can see, it's running Logic Pro 10 or Logic Pro X. I'm not sure how you're supposed to say that. But anyway, here's one of my tracks playing in Logic. And so that is my track 33 playing in Logic. And I love Logic. I've used it really extensively for about the last 5 years, and I much prefer it to Pro Tools. I like the MIDI features, I like the plugins, I like the software instruments. I think it's a great package, and I know it really well. So the laptop takes the place of what used to be a big old tape machine taking up half a room. And how do you get audio into the computer? You use an audio interface. So I have right here 2 USB audio interfaces. And this is the first one. It's real old, it's real cheap. It's an Alesis i02. It has 2 mic pre's and it has MIDI, which is why I keep it around. It's not the greatest piece of gear, but it gets the job done. I have a newer audio interface, a Focusrite Scarlett, that has a much nicer mic pre. It has better gain, less distortion, and the Focusrite is also not that expensive. Both of these interfaces are probably about $100, $150 interfaces. So nothing fancy. I don't have anything more than 2 channels. I can never record more than 2 channels of audio at a time. And over here, if we can just zoom in on this tiny little mixer, it's a Behringer mixer. It costs about $50. It is not used for recording, it's just used for monitoring so that I can combine the computer sound with a keyboard and microphone or other things. Very basic. And speaking of basic, I want to show you my monitors. The speakers are these M Audio bookshelf speakers. Again, very cheap, and they're not good speakers. We'll listen to them a little bit more. I mean, they're all right, but they're not really good quality speakers like you're supposed to have in a studio, but I make do with them. I don't want to spend $1,000 on a really nice pair of studio monitors. So instead, what I use a lot of the time is these Audio-Technica headphones. They're a really nice pair of headphones. They're loud, they're clear, they're comfortable, they sound great. And they do say that you shouldn't mix with headphones, and by and large, that's true. But here's the thing. I like to use the headphones because I like to sit with my laptop in bed, in a couch, outside, on the deck, just headphones and a laptop, and I can do a lot of mixing that way. I can mix all my moves and automation, I can do the effects, I can do all my editing, It's just really when you're hearing the whole thing and you're thinking about the overall sonic picture, you want to be listening on speakers and not headphones. And so I use the M audio speakers for that, but I also take the mixes out in my car, and my secret weapon is the speakers in my Ford Focus, which I listen to all the time. They sound really nice. So basically I combine everything, listening on the headphones, listening on the M audios, listening in the car, and also listening on the laptop speakers and right on the iPhone speaker, because people are going to listen to it that way as well. So that's the computer, the interface, and the monitoring system. And next, I want to tell you about my keyboards. I played all the keyboards on Bottomland, and I did it all on these two keyboards. So first of all, we have this one. It is an 88-key, weighted key digital piano. It's an Alesis QS8. It's pretty old. I got it as a free gift from my good friend Ken Sadati. He gave it to me about 5 or 6 years ago, I think. It's seen some wear and tear. It has two keys, the D and the A right here, that don't do anything, so it might be time to get a new keyboard pretty soon, but this piano has done well for me for a real long time. And then over to my right, we have this little guy. I've had it for a much shorter time. It's a Nectar Impact LX61, and it's just a... It's really great for organ because it has the light non-weighted keys, which is what an organ has, so you can do the glisses, and that is really just perfect for organ and synth sounds. So that's what I use it for. It's also got all these buttons and pads that you can use to control the software if you want. I don't really bother with that. Okay, so now you've got your computer, you've got your interfaces, you've got your speakers, you've got some keyboards so you can play some keyboards. I also do all my drums. I sequence drums, playing them on the keyboard, and before I have them replaced by a real drummer. And then you need a microphone, at least one good quality microphone. I have 3, and everything on Bottomland has gone through one of these 3 microphones. The first one right in front of me here is an AKG Perception 220. This is not an expensive microphone. It is a cheap, hobbyist microphone. You can get it on Amazon for about $150, but nonetheless, I think it sounds really nice. And it's got a shock mount, which is nice. It's got a nice mid-range. It's not too sensitive if you get too close. And I really like it for acoustic guitar, banjo, mandolin, and sometimes for my vocals as well. However, most of my vocals go through the one really nice mic I have, which is right over here. Get close. We'll move the pop filter out of the way. Pop filter is good to have there for singing, especially if you like to sing close on the mic. This is a Neumann TLM 103. I've owned it for over 20 years, and it still is a really great sounding microphone. Tons of clarity, tons of gain. It's not a tube mic, it's just an ordinary condenser microphone, but I just really know it really well. So most of the stuff that you hear on my albums goes through this microphone. And finally, if I'm going to record an amplifier with an electric guitar or lap steel, I want to use one of these 2 mics, not a condenser mic, of course, but a dynamic mic. And these are both Sennheiser 409s. You can't get these anymore, by the way. They are really the best for recording a guitar amp. So when I'm playing through an amp, I'm using one of these microphones. And speaking of amps, I want to real quick show you 2 amps that I use at home to record electric guitars and lap steels. One is over here. If you get it in on the corner there, it says Fender Squier Champ. It's a $65 practice amp. I've had it back since the 1990s. We used to play backstage with God Street Wine when we wanted to warm up. I bought it for that purpose. but I keep it around and I love to practice with it, but I like to record with it sometimes because if you crank it up, it actually has a really nice distortion, nice warm sound at a low volume. So I use it for that. And then over here, greeny, here's the matchless. This is a matchless Lightning 15. I use it on the road with God Street Wine and with the Duo. And it is a beautiful amplifier. The matchless amps were all handmade in the 1990s. They were patterned after the Vox AC series amps, but hand-wired and handmade in the highest quality ingredients. And it's just a beautiful sounding amp. So most of my electric guitar goes through the matchless. And down on the floor we have the pedal board. I put together this pedal board, my first ever pedal board for God Street Wine Tour last summer. And I use it for playing live. When I'm recording, I don't go through all the pedals. I just take out the pedal that I want to use and record through that. But I'll just tell you what they all are real quick. For those of you guitar players out there. This is a TC Electronics Spark. It's just a clean boost. Very useful. This is a Philosopher's Tone made by Pigtronics, which is a compressor, but it's really just a boost. It's another kind of boost with a little bit of compression and a little bit of distortion. This is one of my favorites. This is the Pigtronics envelope phaser, and like its name says, it's really two things in one, an envelope pedal and a phaser. So it gets you the envelope sounds like the Jerry Garcia Mutron wah sounds, and it gets you the phaser for like the funky rhythm guitar sound, or you can have both at once. And then over here is the full drive 2. That's my main distortion pedal. It's really a great sounding pedal with a really warm sound, and plus you've got the boost switch, so you've got two levels of distortion. Very handy. And then the sound is going up here. We have two analog delays. On the left is the old Aquapus, which I've had forever, analog delay, and on the right is the more recent souped-up version, the Supapus, and I run them together side by side so you can get all kinds of sweet delay action. This guy right here is the TC Electronic Viscous Vibe, and it's basically a knockoff of the Dunlop Univibe, which is kind of a vibrato, tremolo, and chorus pedal all in one, depending on how you set it. And finally, in the corner here, we have the TC Electronic Reverb. It's called the Hall of Fame Reverb. And I just use that. It's almost always on. I use that for just a little bit of reverb live because the Matchless does not have any built-in reverb. So that's the amps and pedals. And now I'm going to show you some of the instruments that I played on the Bottomland album. And first off, this little guy is a mandolin that I don't really play mandolin, but I borrowed this from a friend. I play it on 2 or 3 tracks on the album. On the other hand, one instrument that belongs to me that is really special is this banjo. It's a 1909 White Lady banjo made in Boston, Massachusetts over 100 years ago. And the story behind this banjo is it used to belong to my grandfather, who I never met. My dad's father, he died in an accident when my dad was a kid, so I don't know him. I never did know him, but I do have his banjo. I have one picture of him around the age of a college student in the 1920s playing this banjo. It's a really special banjo. I played it as a kid when I started out. I was 8 years old, played it when I started off playing bluegrass. Then I got into rock and roll when I was a teenager. Didn't play much banjo after that, but my mom kept it in storage for me for 30 years, and I only recently took it out of storage. I play it on 2 tracks on the Bottomland album. Say what?
Turn it over and show me the thing again.
Oh, okay. There's the inside. I don't know if you can see this, where it says AC Fairbanks Makers, Boston, Mass. Okay, this is my main acoustic guitar.
Just been really dazzled.
from the early 1990s. When I was in God Street Wine, our record label, Geffen Records, actually bought us these guitars so we could play in-store acoustic shows. That's how I got this. It's a really beautiful guitar. I always keep this guitar tuned down a half step, so the lowest string is E flat or D flat if I'm in drop D, but drop D flat really. And I capo a lot to play in different keys. And I also play an Eastman acoustic guitar on the record that I don't have here with me, but most of it is this Taylor, and the Taylor is also what I play live. Okay, I'm going to talk about the lap steels now. Both of these lap steels were made for me by my friend who lives in New Jersey, Tad Troilo. And this is the first one he made for me. It's made out of a solid piece of mahogany. Both of them are 6-string lap steels with Seymour Duncan pickups, and they both sound and feel really great. And I'll show you the other one. This one is made out of a solid piece of pine that came from the Pillsbury Dough Factory in Boston, Massachusetts. It was about 100 years old. The tree it came from was probably about 200 years old. That's why it has this great pattern. And I use the Shub steel, and I use the Dunlop regular steel finger picks, so you have steel on both ends. And I tune both the lap steels to C, E, G, A, C, E. It's a 6th chord. And I've been spending the last few years trying to learn how to play the lap steel with the C6 tuning. It's a lot of fun. Okay, I'm just going to tell you about my 2 electric guitars. This is my Paul Reed Smith Custom 24. I got this in the mid-90s. I bought it off of our sound guy, Dean Mullen, and he had bought it in the late 80s. I believe it's a 1987 guitar. I'm not totally sure. It has a one-piece top. There's no seam connecting 2 halves of wood here. It's all just one piece of wood. If you look closely at the binding, you can see it's been dropped many times, been hit, but it just takes a beating and keeps on ticking. This is an amazing guitar. It always stays in tune. It always plays great. And this is really my main act playing live nowadays with God Street Wine. But the oldest is this 1967 Fender Telecaster. I love especially finger picking on this one. It always sounds nice and clean. And it's so bright, and it always feels great to play. I bought this one in 1990 when my original guitar had been stolen. And at an early God Street Wine show, it was sitting up on stage at our set break between sets, just sitting on stage, and a fan of ours, unbeknownst to me, jumped up on stage with these decal letters and put this GSW right on the pickguard of the guitar. And I was a little annoyed. I was irritated at the time, but I just left them on there. And now they've been on there for, I don't know, 25, 30 years or so. And it's the GSW Telecaster. I could never think of taking them off at this point. So I guess that's it. Oh, one thing I don't have here to show you is my 1976 Fender Precision bass. I do play bass on about half the songs on the record. Old TP Tom Perosi plays bass on the other half. And on the ones that I played my Fender P bass that I've had since I was a teenager. It's a really nice bass to play. As you can tell, I tend to hang on to the same guitars for a long time. And so that's another one. I'll show it to you some other time. But that is all the gear that I use to make the Bottomland record, except for the drum recordings, which were done at a studio. I don't have enough microphones and I don't have the acoustic space here to record drums. But all the guitars, all the bass, all the mandolin, banjo, acoustic guitar, keyboards, mixing and mastering, and the string section, which I did right here in my living room, all this was done at my house. So you don't need really fancy equipment to make a good sounding record. You just need to know what you want to do and spend the time to make sure that it sounds right. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a subscribe at the bottom, and please look out for the tracks from Bottomland, which I'll be releasing in the next couple weeks. Thank you for listening. See you later.